In 1964, a man walked into a courtroom in South Africa, knowing he was about to destroy his entire life. He wasn't poor, he wasn't oppressed, he wasn't desperate. He was one of them.
Whatever labels may be attached to the 15 charges brought against me, they all arise from my having been a member of the Communist Party.
Born into power, raised inside privilege, groomed to protect the system, and then he chose to betray it. His name was Bram Fischer.
He believed that the Afrikaners, above all, should have understood the leaders of the African and other people in South Africa who had said, there comes a time when we can take no more.
Bram, in a way, was very much ahead of his times in many ways. He is an Afrikaner who comes from what may be regarded as a kind of an aristocratic family, a very successful and a bright advocate, but who chooses to sacrifice all that in pursuit of justice.
The young Bram Fischer grew up in the wide open spaces of the Free State on a farm near Bloemfontein. When he was born in 1908, nobody would have dreamed that he would one day be labeled as a traitor to his people. His family had high hopes for him. After all, his grandfather, Bram Fischer, was a cabinet minister in the Union of South Africa. His father, Peter Ulrich Fischer, was the judge-president of the Free State. His mother, Ella, was a member of the prominent Fichard clan of Bloemfontein.
Before you understand the man, you need to understand the machine. Apartheid wasn't just racism. That's the surface story. Underneath, it was an economic system, a machine designed to do one thing: concentrate wealth and protect it. Land was controlled. Labor was controlled. Movement was controlled. And at the top of it all, a small circle of Afrikaner power, families who didn't just benefit from the system, they were the system. The Fischers were one of them, even though they were not as hardcore.
Is never a better example of a man of principle than Bram Fischer. Bram Fischer could have been a president of Apartheid South Africa.
Elite education, elite connections, elite future. There was only one path for a man like Fischer: protect the system, expand it, benefit from it. But something started to break. Bram Fischer wasn't lucky, he was positioned. His father, a judge, a man who enforced the very laws that kept the system alive. His grandfather, a former prime minister. This wasn't influence, this was generational power.
Bram Fischer had a normal Afrikaans upbringing. He went to Grey College in Bloemfontein, then on to the Free State University to study law. He even played rugby for the Free State and then faced the All Blacks in 1929. On the whole, he was a model Afrikaner.
As a student at the Free State University, he joined the sort of precursor of NUSAS was the student parliament. He was in fact the first nationalist prime minister of this student parliament. He could have travelled up quite a steep ladder of success had he chosen that kind of path. Now, I think as far as I know Bram, that he what he did was he did because he truly believed in it as a very important, I mean, as a sort of basis of his life.
But when did Bram Fischer undergo this momentous change that would set him on a path removed from his fellow Afrikaners? It is thought that it must have happened sometime in the 30s. He went to Oxford in 1932 as a Rhodes Scholar, and he spent 5 years there. During that time, he toured Europe and Russia.
The security police liked to think that, he was brainwashed, or people making excuses for him liked to think that, he was whipped off to the Soviet Union and brainwashed there. In fact, he did visit the Soviet Union while he was a student, but was not terribly impressed with it. I mean, there is a letter still around. But at some stage, in the late 30s, he did join the party, the Communist Party. But it was quite fashionable in those days.
Because power looks very different from the inside. As a lawyer, Fischer saw the truth most people never see. The law wasn't neutral. It was a weapon used to protect wealth, used to control labor, used to silence an entire population. And once you realize that, you have a problem, because now you know you're part of it. Most people in his position would look away. Fischer didn't. He started doing the unthinkable, working with the very people the state called enemies, people connected to the African National Congress, to his class. This wasn't politics. This was betrayal.
With confidence, we lay our case before the whole world. Whether we win or die, freedom will rise in Africa like the sun from the morning clouds. President Kruger had been talking of freedom for the white Afrikaner. Fischer was talking about freedom for the black African.
By 1946, he was chairman of the Central Committee of the Communist Party. When the nationalist government came into power in 1948, the Communist Party started feeling the pressure. The party was banned in the early 50s.
Afrikanerdom's brilliant men. Grandson of a leading statesman, son of a judge-president, himself a former leader of the Johannesburg Bar, for this man to be head of the Communist Party of South Africa was a treacherous fault in the lager.
I think it would be correct to say that Fischer is regarded by the vast majority of Afrikaners as a traitor, not only to the Afrikaans cause, but also to the Christian faith.
Then came the moment that would define everything. The state moved to crush resistance, and on the other side of that courtroom was Nelson Mandela, facing life imprisonment, possibly worse, and standing beside him, defending him, was a man who had been born into the very system trying to destroy him, Bram Fischer.
I have fought against white domination.
A trial that changed the course of history, October 1963, still resonates in the hearts and minds of many.
And I have fought against black domination.
At the time, the apartheid system was attempting to ensure white domination by all means necessary. Accused number one and the first commander of Umkhonto weSizwe, the military wing of the liberation movement, the ANC, Nelson Mandela, left the court with these timeless words before his sentencing.
I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities.
Mandela was not alone in standing firm against the apartheid system. 9 other anti-apartheid activists stood trial at the so-called Palace of Justice in Pretoria. They were Walter Sisulu, Govan Beki, Raymond Mhlaba, Ahmed Katrada, and Arthur Goldrich, Dennis Goldberg, Lionel Bestein, Elias Motsoaledi, and Andrew Mlangeni. This group was arrested on the Lily's Leaf farm in Rivonia, north of Johannesburg, where they were meeting as the newly formed wing of Umkhonto weSizwe. It is where Mandela and his companion lived in disguise. In the early 1960s, the South African Communist Party and the MK High Command purchased the isolated farm called Lily's Leaf. There, a decision was made that Arthur Goldrich and his family would live in the main farmhouse, while other houses on the farm would be used as meeting places.
I was then the first commander of Umkhonto weSizwe. It was natural that I should be sent out to go and persuade the international community.
We were careless at Rivonia. We were very careless.
When the treason trial drew to a close in 1961, Bram continued his underground political work.
There was the formation of Umkhonto we Sizwe. From or conversations I had, Bram was not in favor of the violence, but when this decision was taken, he went along with it. And I didn't think, regretted it afterwards. I mean, I think he thought it was the right decision.
Of his involvement with Umkhonto we Sizwe, Bram Fischer said in 1966,
I had no hand in the founding of Umkhonto, and I've never been a member. I became aware of its existence, and I did not disapprove.
At this point, there was no going back. Fischer crossed the line completely. He went underground, not just as a lawyer, but as part of the resistance itself. Now he wasn't just disloyal, he was dangerous.
He came to say goodbye, and I knew that he was going to lead the underground movement.
Even if it were just the gesture of, I'm prepared to go the whole way, I think that alone made it an important move.
When we first saw him, we didn't recognize him. I mean, you've seen the pictures of what he looked like. It was absolutely amazing.
And it was only his blue eyes that I finally realized, no, this is Bram.
After the trial, it became apparent that Bram was part of the underground that actually met at Rivonia Trial. Many of our colleagues condemned him for taking the trial. He should not have been associated with it at all once he had personal knowledge of the happenings.
Power doesn't tolerate betrayal. He was caught, arrested, put on trial, and now the roles had flipped. The man who once defended others was now defending himself against the very system that had created him.
In July 1964, Bram Fischer was detained for 3 days under the 90-day clause of the General Law Amendment Act.
And then in about September he was arrested and charged under the Suppression of Communism Act.
While awaiting trial, Fischer was asked to handle an appeal case before the British Privy Council in London. He asked for bail. He told the magistrate,
I have no intention of avoiding a political prosecution. I fully believe I can establish my innocence. I am an Afrikaner. My home is South Africa. I will not leave South Africa because my political beliefs conflict with those of the government ruling the country.
And so he had bail and he went to England, where quite a lot of pressure was put on him to remain out of the country.
But he said no, he'd given his word and he was going to return.
He came back to the country to lead it, to lead the struggle.
Well, I knew he would come back. And I wasn't very surprised when he dodged bail, because he did it not for the purpose of own protection, but for the purpose of carrying on the cause he was fighting for.
When Fischer skipped bail during his trial, he wrote a letter to his counsel, Advocate H. Hansen, who read it to the court. In it, he said,
These are my reasons for absenting myself from court. If by my flight I can encourage even some people to think about, to understand and to abandon the policies they now so blindly follow, I shall not regret any punishment I may incur. I can no longer serve justice in the way I have attempted to do during the past 30 years. I can do it only in the way I have now chosen. Finally, I would like you to urge upon the court to bear in mind that if it chooses to punish any of my fellow accused, it will be punishing them for holding the ideas today that will be universally accepted tomorrow.
He lost everything, his status, his freedom, his place among the elite. He was sentenced to life in prison, and he died there.
He was charged on 15 counts ranging from sabotage to fraud to contravening the Suppression of Communism Act. During the trial on March the 28th, 1966, Bram Fischer made a 3.5-hour statement from the dock in the Pretoria Supreme Court. In it, he said,
When the laws themselves become immoral and require the citizen to take part in an organized system of oppression, if only by his silence or apathy, then I believe that a higher duty arises. This compels one to refuse to recognize such laws.
When they were summing up, they were asking for the death sentence. I mean, we suddenly, the three of us, turned to each other with horror as the state wound up their case and realized that they were actually asking for the death sentence.
But he was sentenced to life imprisonment and sent to the Pretoria maximum security prison.
Of course, it was apartheid years, so the white men were kept separate from the black men, so he didn't go to Robben Island.
The prison authorities, I think, being lent on by the security police, treated Bram very badly, right from the time that he came in. They regarded him and took it out on him as the groot verraaier, if you like. He was the betrayer.
Prison warders tried desperately to break Bram. I mean, he was put to cleaning lavatories and scrubbing floors and really, was really put upon very hard.
And they would almost treat him as an animal. He was something when they had visitors. They would show Bram off, ons het hom, hier is hy, he's Bram. Kom Brampie, kom Brampie.
Bram's greatest achievement was the fact that he saved Mandela's life at the Rivonia Trial.
Can't talk of Bram without Molly.
Molly, as much as Bram, really believed in the ideology.
During the whole of the Rivonia trial, I think she was very, very tense, expecting that he could be arrested at any moment.
It was not an easy life that they led.
I don't think we suffered inordinately as children of the struggle. We had a warm, loving family.
He had a model there of what anti-imperialism was about. As a member of a family who had resisted British imperialism, when he became a communist, it wasn't a complete turnabout.
He described it with such intense feeling of how he had to go to this meeting of a Joint Council of Europeans and Africans in Bloemfontein, and in that event he had to shake a black man's hand, and he felt such a sense of revulsion, embarrassment. But that was somehow really Bram. He could not sit with the discomfort of something so inexplicable to him until he could really work. And he described it as quite an anguishing time to sit and try and work out how could he have had black friends as his best friends, and now he had this feeling. And as you say, he then came to realize that he had changed.
Well, until the Communist Party was banned, we used to have wonderful sort of fundraising parties and things. For us, it was quite exciting as kids, and Mosey over there used to lead the singing and dancing.
Bram had a tremendous influence on not just Mandela and Walter Sisulu, but also over many other people. He had this power of persuasion, and he had a sharp mind, a brilliant mind, and he was able to make complex issues very simple and understandable.
Bram was elected as a member of the Bar Council. In the late 40s, he became the chairperson of the bar. He was respected by the profession, trusted by the profession.
But he's such an honest person. Bram says, I will come back. I'll come back and face the case. Now, this shows the honesty of a person of the caliber of Bram Fischer.
Bram Fischer's story isn't just about apartheid. It's about how power actually works. Because systems like this don't survive just on force. They survive because the people inside them stay loyal. Fischer didn't. And that's what made him dangerous. Because the most dangerous person to any system is not the one outside it. It's the one who was born inside it and chooses to tear it down.